Hey guys, I am Ash. He is Saf, and we're here in Dragonheir Silent Gods. Thank you, Dragonheir Silent Gods, for making this channel possible. Saf, how you doing, man? It's been a minute or two since we recorded, since we had our amazing summoning video. Been making progress here on developing our teams, on working on kind of our first teams, grinding through the campaign in the game. But today we're here to actually talk about, I guess, classes. Is that a fair word to describe?
Yeah.
What are they called? Types of heroes in the game?
I don't really know what they call. They're kind of like roles, types. They're all a little bit of the same thing. It's kind of like what the hero actually like sits under a banner, or some might call them factions, but they're not really those either. They're kind of like the role that they have in a team, I guess. It's the closest thing that I would say is a role. Okay, understanding hero roles. I think that's fair. And I think there's a lot to learn here, and yeah, let's just jump into it, man. Where do you maybe like an overview of roles and you know how you should approach them, how they should inform the decisions that you make in terms of the heroes that you upgrade on your account. Yeah, exactly. So we've got elements down the left. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the elements, not fire or frost, but within each element there will be a universal role, which is kind of like defense and support. You can see here like Tauren is a support, Rippercast is a defense. That means they just don't align to to sort of like an element specific role. But then within each element, there is also unique roles. So in Necrosis here, we've got summoners, which are absolutely unique here. I think also we have in
Summon.
In fire, we've got wild. In ice, we've got frost. Not to be mistaken with frozen. I always do this. In rally is in radiant. So there's like one unique for each element, and then every single element will then have a support and a defense. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that every defense champion is a tank and every support champion is like a support champion. There can be quite a lot of support champions that are very good tanks, or a lot of support champions that are very good damage dealers. We've seen this with someone like Sigrid, which we've talked about in a previous video. But what I really want to go through today with you, Ash, is we want to look at the element specific roles. Things like poison, how they work and when you should use them, and what they kind of do, because the game doesn't really explain it in enough detail for you to really just go, I know what this does. So maybe we should start with poison here. Let's start. We summoned a lot of poison heroes. We didn't get the one that we were really hoping for, but you guys can check out that video if you'd like to. But do you just apropos of nothing, Saf, just because I'm curious, do you have a favorite, just general special class or ability out of all of them, like just as personal? My personal favorite is I like season summon, one, bro. It's probably summon. Okay, good. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. It's just my favorite one to watch happen, because you can make some absolutely crazy teams with. Who doesn't like a nice like necromancer? Whatever. Unleash the horde. It feels like a something like Game of Thrones in that hard home where they're all coming, all the skeletons are charging forward or something. All right, so it's quite funny. Back to the basics here. Back to the poisons. Poisons, yeah. So I guess before we get into what all about poisoners, is there because I remember you mentioning this in our last video, Saf, is that should we be keeping an eye out for one specific hero to kind of unlock all the rest of these special abilities or special classes within these affinities? Yeah, normally every single role will have that linchpin hero. Normally, it's often they'll have a couple. But in poison, very specifically, there is one linchpin hero that kind of like makes it all work, and that is Lothair more than anyone else. Lothair has this very cool passive where he will deal a bonus additional damage for every target under poison. So I should say, poison by its name is the only type that can place poisons. Essentially, they place poisons, and that is what they build their hero designs and kind of like what they do around poison. So in this example, Lothair will deal additional derivative damage to targets under poison. Now, it doesn't sound like an awful lot, but actually what it's saying is, and this is something that you kind of don't really know from the description, when he deals damage, each stack of poison will do that bonus damage, and you can stack the poison up to 40 stacks on a target. Whoa. So the challenge really, you're right, it's not intuitive at all from the reading. No, it literally sounds like, I do damage to a target when there's one poison and it's 0.5% of the max HP, and you think, that's not that much. But when it's 0.5% times 40, then you see where this damage output really comes from. Now, poisons are going to be kind of like what a lot of people will struggle the most with, because you need a lot of things to make it work, because you have to get that poison extension going. I think with an epic called Corin, I think it's a poison called Corin, Yeah, Corrin's ultimate, I believe, extends the duration of all poisons.
Okay.
So what
yes.
you want to do is get to 40 and stay at 40 and then let Lothair's passive do damage. That's kind of like how you would build a poison. It's very one-dimensional, and you need a lot to make it work. But that's how poison works, essentially. Now, the poison effect itself, as you see, will deal, like most poisons in game, damage over time. It's a dot, it's a damage over time, and it's based off derivative damage. So you want to build Enlightenment stat to increase the poison damage.
Okay. So Enlightenment is going to be key. I have to ask, what if somebody has the fortunate or misfortune, like we did, to get a bunch of poisoners, like in our case, some legendary heroes, some epics as well, but they don't have Lothair or Corrin, for example? Is it even worth building them? You know, how should you approach a situation like we're in right now?
It's subjective to the content a little bit. If you're doing like any sort of long form boss content, which is what you see a lot in like month 1 and month 2, or month 2 and month 3 of the season, and things like Vortex, then that's where Lothair would be really strong, because you, as I said, you build up the poison stacks, and once you're at 40 and you can sustain them, then you can do a lot. But you do need a lot to make that happen. You need Corrin, you normally need that artifact from the legendary tier, the Hourglass, to give yourself a lot of skill haste so that you can constantly keep sustaining them. That being said, Jathalia is a pretty good damage dealer for sort of just general, you know, Bay kind of level progression, pillars. Not too bad, because she will explode the poisons, so you can build up lots of stacks and then explode them. It's not so much as trying to keep the poisons on all the time. So it is probably one of the weaker ones. Purely because you need so many parts to make it work. The other big shout out is also Durango, because Durango is able to
Unchained.
pump poisons out. He pumps poisons out so much. He puts a lot of poisons out. You'll see, like on his ultimate, I think it is, he'll attack 3 times and puts 2 stacks of poisons, and he can pump poisons, which often people, if they're looking for a poison team, you kind of position it around Lothair Durango, and then you use Corrin to extend it, which is a very expensive build.
So for building a poison team, 2 like very basic beginner questions for you. Number 1 is are we looking, and I guess this will apply to all of the elements here, is are we looking to pair at least 1 poisoner with defense and support, or is it really just based on the specific hero? You know, it's not, you have to actually look at what they're doing versus trying to fit each, you know, role within the team.
Normally, when you're building a team, you'll want 1 tank. That can be someone like Talwa if you want. It can be Urganda there that you see. Who's also a defensive
cool,
unit.
Man.
He is cool, right? You gotta love the artwork.
Right.
You definitely want a tank, and normally you'll want some form of healer in that team. That's why one of the poison tanks here is Frubath, one of the epics, absolute god champion for a lot of things, because you get the tanking ability with a decreased attack, so an attack penalty on the target, but his battle ability will do a healing vortex around him, which means that he's pretty good at healing himself and others around him. So you normally want a tank and a healer, and then the last 3 spots is where you would normally fill out if you're building a poison team with poisoners. That's how you kind of approach it on a very basic level. Okay,
and that was my final question to you before we move on, is going to be, and this applies to everywhere as well, is what about like mixing, if I'm building a poison team, could I throw in, you know, a couple Frost, like for those, or should the team be the entire team? Like, should the goal be to have everybody be poison?
So in the early game, you can absolutely mix up 2 different, like 3 different elements. Because the Psychic Core will eventually kick in later on in the game, but in the early game, you don't get the 5 elemental bonus. When you get to the later stages of a season, you start getting what they call 5 element bonuses, which means that you only get those if you have 5 of the same element pairing, which I think this season is poison and fire. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's poison and fire. So yeah, so if you have like poison and fire, you can see like they're saying that the 5 elemental bonus will unlock in the Psychic Core as you start getting Psychic Core bonuses. We haven't covered Psychic Core yet on this channel. We absolutely will do. But in the early game, you can get away with having like 3 poisoners, a fire, and a necrosis, because as long as you have 3 of a fire and poison element, you're okay. You've activated your 3 bonus. That's why you will get to a point where if you start with a fire, you're only really building fire and poison. Because you lose the bonus if you don't go that 5 deep towards those matchups.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm assuming we're gonna go Frost on on our account here?
We will probably start. I've been I'm an R in because we pulled Krisos, I think his name is, and he's an absolute powerful tank.
Yes.
Which means
here he is.
Yeah, Krisos. So I'm kind of
oh,
curious.
it's a tough decision here. Okay, but that's another video for another day. But these are the type of things that you guys will be thinking about as well, obviously, when you're looking to build your first team or when you're looking to build your way towards the end game. So now I understand here in the beginning, we want a 3 elemental affinity to get that bonus. And then we're going to be working our way towards the mid, and then the end game, we'll have a separate team for each elemental affinities. All right, cool. Let's keep making our way up here. And hey, we have none of the Dauntless on our, or legendaries at least.
I don't think we got many of the epics either. We got one, which is Shagroll. Yeah. So this is a situation in your early game where you look at it and you go, okay, how many Dauntless do I have? And you look at this and you go, okay, I've got Shagroll. That's not enough for you to build a Dauntless team. Oh, is that Volthag? No, I always mix up defense here. We've got one. Volthag is defense, Naguk is defense. So yeah, we've only got one Dauntless. So
yeah, we got one Dauntless, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you kind of look at it and you go, well, we do have some rares.
Yeah, we do have a few rares. Yeah.
But ultimately, with Dauntless, it's very heavily focused around either 2 legendaries or 1 epic.
Okay, well, what is Dauntless? How about say that first, and then
Dauntless is very cool. If we just go into Shagroll here, we can kind of look at it as a hero design. So what Dauntless will do, and you can always check any of these types. If you've watched this video and you forget about it over time, you can click on Dauntless on the right, and it will absolutely give you a little bit of a preview of what it is doing. Now, Dauntless is your good old-fashioned auto attack champion. If you've ever played any MMO game or any of these kind of builds where it's like it's all about attacking really, really quickly. That is essentially what Dauntless is. It's about basic attacks, and a lot of their abilities will be considered basic attacks, which means any artifacts that operate around basic attacks, any art sets, for example. For example, there's normally a set that ignores defense on your basic attacks. Because their abilities are all considered basic attacks, they all apply, which is what's quite unique about them. So if you look at, for example, Shagroll's battle ability on the left there, you'll see it says at the bottom normally, or maybe at the ultimate ability, maybe he's unique. There we go, the ultimate ability. This skill is counted as a basic attack.
Okay.
So if you equip him with a set that has ignore defense on basic attacks, then his ultimate ability...
Everything's gonna... Okay.
Exactly. And they're normally based on killing things very, very quickly. They're much more focused towards a bit of an arena focus or lots of wave killing because they kill units very quickly. But if you really want to run them against bosses, you kind of need to have the very specific ones to do it.
So now we know what Dauntless is. Who are those specifics? Who should we have an eye out for?
So if you're on an epic level, I think that's the best place to start. Like, for example, if we had Shagroll and Shaltar together, the one next to him, then I would say we've got a very interesting team. And the reason why is because of Shaltar's ultimate. He actually empowers all of your basic attacks to do bonus damage. So he basically just giga charges them there. You can see that there's a 60% chance that every time any of our Dauntless allies attack, they will do bonus damage, which is a really big, powerful stim.
What about the legendary? So if we have Shagroll and Shaltar, what if we only had... But just one is not enough, in your opinion, to really lean in heavily?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of use them, but a lot of the time as well, they'll be they'll play off each other. So I think, for example, like Shaltar only really empowers the strength of Dauntless very well. Like, it will empower others, but you can see they want you to use those. I think, for example, Furnace or Nimbus has passives that interact with... there you go. This hero gains an extra 20% attack speed for every Dauntless ally on the team. So if you only bring one, then he gets 20%. You bring 3 Dauntless.
Got you.
Well, 60% is a big increase. So they really are kind of showing you, like, you know, if you're going to go one way, you do have to invest. I think Nimbus, for example, has a passive where it maybe he's a bit unique. I think maybe he's all based on attack speed. I don't think he's got anything to do with Dauntless, but there's a couple of other Dauntless ones that they'll interact with each other. And we'll see it more in other types as well.
And it seems like we're just basically looking for, when we're, you know, in terms of informing the decisions that we make on our account, we're really looking for, you know, as we summon, just getting inevitably we're going to get some of these heroes, right? So making these informed
Yes.
decisions based on whoever you're given, and that's why like Saf's here trying to like point out the key heroes you should be looking for in every type, not just
Yes.
one. So who are the Legos, by the way? Who are the big big legendary targets?
The really popular Vortex team is Evelios and Tharivol, because they are very good at picking on a single target. I think Evelios, for example,
so cool,
increases. Yeah, I mean,
I always say that about everybody, but like this guy is so. I just wish I could zoom in a bit more, but anyway.
You can click on them to make them look all. I actually really love the lightning backdrop as well. It looks.
I know, dude. Okay.
Cool.
So he's okay. So he's like the number one.
He's got a passive. Yeah, he's got a passive. I think it's Evelios, where there you go. That damage ignores 100% of the target's defense.
Okay.
For example.
Gotcha.
That's really strong.
Yep.
But I think his partner in Tharivol picks on a target, and the more he attacks that target, the faster his attack speed goes. Which I think is there you go. That's how it goes. So he's going to attack much faster against a single target, which makes him extremely good for killing bosses. The really strong team every season tends to be this like Dauntless, Tharivol, Evelios setup in Vortex, and that they can do some absolute insane numbers. They really just go crazy.
That's cool, man. Too bad we don't have any of them. So I guess let's move on then.
Let's move on to the fun one. I really like Rally. Rally's fun.
And we have Garius. He was our big choice.
He's the tank,
He's our
Rally's
tank.
Really cool.
Yeah. So let's talk about Rally.
So Rally is the best described as like a buff manipulator. That's the way I describe it.
Yeah.
The idea is that when you get rallied, your abilities will do bonus things that they wouldn't do if they weren't rallied. So for example, if we look at Hedgeow's ultimate here, he will do absolute insane damage when he is rallied. So if he is rallied,
50% damage boost,
50% more. It's kind of crazy. So rally champions are all about working with each other, because you need to I don't think he himself can put himself into rally. So you need someone that's going to put him into rally to get that bonus.
So unfortunately, it's not as easy as just having the rally ability guarantees they're going to be granting rally to everybody else on the team. So I guess we're going to be looking out for, I mean, we all know how much you love Garius. You think he's at least we did make the decision that he's the best epic for season 1 in the game, because he's who we chose as our not free, but our $1 or epic. But who are we looking for in terms of, other than Garius, in terms of building a rally team?
Yeah, so what you're looking for really more than anything else with rally is enablers, because actually a lot of the rally champions are good damage dealers when they're in rally. Like people like Hegio, Martina. We've got people like even rare champions. If we go down, like there's quite a lot of rally ones. Like for example, Welby. I actually use Welby on some of my season 3 end games over legendaries, because he does some quite good damage, because every time he's got a rally, he has a 50% return of his ultimate.
Oh yeah.
So he can actually pump this more often. But he needs, I think, I don't know if he can put himself into rally. If we just check his battle skill. So yeah, he can put himself into rally, so it's not so much of a problem. But really what you're looking for is someone who can keep these heroes in rally. So you want enablers. So from an epic level, it's probably Alvis more than anyone else.
Good old
because Alvis has this really cool thing where he can duplicate on a passive if rally is there. So when he's not having rally, he will duplicate it on an ally.
Okay.
And he will then do so many buffs. Actually,
with the highest attack as well. Okay.
Yeah, and then on his ultimate, he will basically place one of those every single one of those buffs on a rally, and then he will, if he is under rally, he will put it on 2 rally champions. So you can literally boost your rally champions to super damage. He's like the best epic one.
Oh,
and
that's
the one
crazy,
you kind of look for in legendary is Alton, the little harp dude.
Okay, there he is. Good old Alton. Okay.
Because of his ultimate, it's so strong.
Increase the domain for 10 seconds, increasing the hero's passive trigger chance to 100%, firing an orb every 2 seconds at a random enemy, dealing radiant damage. If he has rally when casting, consumes rally to reduce the firing interval to 1 second.
So he's doing that all the time, but I think on his passive, he's constantly providing rally. I'm pretty sure that's the way it goes.
Those without a rally have a 50% chance to gain rally and will be immediately consumed. Got you.
So every time one of your...
Yeah,
it basically means when your rally champion tries to use an ability and they don't have rally, he can give them rally instantly. And he gets
damage up or rally, basically. Yeah,
exactly, yeah. And I think his battle skill does something else by enabling as well. What I would call the Trunder of Dragonheir.
The Trunder.
I know you like your raid references.
I do.
Filtho. Filto is the Trunda of
Filto is the
Dragonheir.
Trunda. Oh my
Yeah.
god, look at that. Look at that. Is that a weapon or a telescope? Okay, it's a massive gun. Got you.
It's a massive gun. It's,
Holy moly.
It's effective. It's
Yes.
very effective.
Okay, all right.
If you have a look at his ultimate, you will see what I mean.
600% rated damage to enemies within range. If he has rally, consumes rally, and gets a plus 600% extra 2 times. And the hero recharges ultimate energy by 20%. All right,
just,
man.
Just do the math on that.
Yeah.
That's 600%. And then if he gets rally, he does another
two-
600%. So that becomes a
1800%.
1800%. The average ultimate is about 700%.
Woo! All right, all right. So
it's like Trunda boof. And
okay.
It's fun.
All
but
right.
It's Alton and Laurentheal, I think, are the two. I think Laurentheal is the other one that's really, really good for enabling. So you're kind of looking for enablers here. I think she might be the one that I'm thinking of that.
Okay, every ultimate fully recharges, grants rally to all allies for 10 seconds.
And then her ultimate, I believe, is a domain. That's the one I was thinking of. I got the wrong one.
Yeah.
This is the one. Whenever she creates a domain, they just constantly, keep giving rally, keep giving boosts, recharging ultimate. She really enables the rallies to go insane. So with rally, it's all about how do you put the rally on your hero, and then once they get it, they will probably unleash quite good damage.
All right, so getting a rally applier and then just building, the most overall rally utility around that applier. Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's time for the summoning. It's time for a little necromancing here.
I love summons.
Yeah.
Really
so where are we starting here? So summoners, I mean, I'm very acquainted with this because we actually use both of our legendary summoners quite a bit here, and they're really our carries here in the early game. So not a lot of thought goes into it. I guess I'm sure this is typical of many players, right? But when you start out, you're like, oh, legendary, we'll use them, So that's kind of how we're at. But I really love the summons. They feel super strong, at least in the early game to me, having those big summons just ravage the entire battlefield. What's going to inform us building, or what do summons do other than the obvious? Is there any added advantage to summoning in this game?
Yeah, so summons are actually quite unique in the sense that there's multiple different ways they kind of work. So you have the summoners will deal damage from their summoned components, right? Summon, quite obvious, what they do is they summon different creatures, whether they be skeletons or dragons or souls or different various things. The concept is they summon, and those summoners become units on the battlefield, and they run at their enemies and they tank things.
Super
so
cool.
You've got two ways to do damage, either through the summons themselves by basically doing damage from the summoned creatures. You can use what you summon to empower the hero in the summon class, so that the more
so like a support
the
summon, kind of.
Yeah, so it's almost like they summon skeletons to make themselves stronger, but the skeletons themselves are just fodder for the will of the summoner, if that makes sense.
Okay, I got you. Okay, I like that. So it strikes me as compared to Rally and Dauntless, it's a bit different here, where it seems like it's not as predicated on having one unlock everything for you, or am I wrong there?
Well, normally it's actually the biggest problem with summoners, you need the higher quality heroes, you need the legendary. So for example, Sharlak and Larry, as we're calling him, they're very much focused on the summon that you bring, right? So the Fearbear is the damage dealer for Sharlak, and then Larry is going to replicate the Fearbear. And then all we need to do with that Fearbear, which is what Sharlak summons, is get a few more summons so that we activate his passive. So the skeletons will enable the damage on the Fearbear, and the Fearbear is who we really want to build everything around. So that's the first way you can kind of do it. Like what I've summoned is what's going to carry me. But when you look at someone like Premster, well, she does this huge ultimate based on the number of summoned units. See, whenever she'll do this to activate Tireless Devotion, and then that is the passive ability. And whenever a unit dies, she just does bonus damage. So the more you summon, the more she deals damage.
So there are still empowerers, so to speak, of this type.
Yeah. You're less concerned about how good the skeletons are and more concerned about how many you can get, because the more skeletons you get, the more her passive activates. So that's kind of like the two approaches.
So how can you tell how fast I guess it just says it in the ability somewhere, right? How often they're summoning or how many they're summoning?
So it depends. So Sharlak, for example, will summon this one big Fearbear. Lilwanis, I think, I don't have too much experience. The best summoner for actual skeletons is a rare more often than not, and it is Aluia, which I can never say her name properly. Aluia, which is quite good. So every 6th basic attack or 5th we get a skeleton for 15 seconds. So if you load Aluia up with lots of attack speed, you can really summon you can summon an army of the dead really, really quickly.
Ooh,
and then
cool.
she also will buff all the summoned units. So she actually places attack speed and attack up on all the undead summoned units. So we can put that on the Fairbear, for example.
I almost feel like we should be using her, man.
We probably will be, yeah.
Yeah.
There is a couple of others down here, like Vaska can kind of like stay alive. It's a bit more of like a tank summon, where every single time a summoned unit dies, the Vaska will heal, which is kind of a reverse tank scenario. Like if we have a lot of summoned units and there's a lot of healing, Korth can be quite cool as well. The rares are actually really interesting, but if you really want to get the damage, you need the legendaries, unfortunately, with this one.
Is there any big call out for epics before we move on to
Zadok and Joyce.
Okay, Joyce.
Joyce
Ooh, a little,
is all about his summons.
What's her face? Taj of the Rye, a little vibe going on.
Yeah, Intimate the Fool. Yeah, exactly. So what he does is he summons Phantom. He will summon his Phantom of
Fortune
himself.
Fin.
And he can get 3 of them. And they last a long time, 45 seconds.
Yeah.
And they're all attacking with him, with his abilities. So he surprisingly does quite a lot of damage. But again, he's on the type of, my summons do my damage, not me.
Yeah, okay. And the other one was...
Zadok, he's probably the premier epic.
Okay.
Because he will increase his attack. For every summon that dies on his passive, you can see when an ally
recharges ultimate energy and gains extra attack.
Permanent attack. It's permanent.
Ooh.
So it stays there for the
Stacks
fight.
up to 30 times. Got you.
Yes. So you get what? What's that? 4 times 30? Like that? It's like 120% more attack.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Okay. All right. Wow. That's awesome. Okay. Man, to me, this feels like an OP type here, summoners, man, because you're making copies of yourself. You've got like all these additional units on the battlefield. What's the downside of summoners?
The main downside is just like, the best way to describe it is like noise on the map. Because positioning is very important in Dragonheir. If you're summoning loads of different things, you're knocking things around, you can literally block your heroes from attacking because there's too many skeletons in the way. That's often the problem with summons. It's like you either summon too many things, which then blocks your heroes, or you don't summon enough, which means you can't get the power out of them. And a lot of their targeting is a bit awkward. Like Urzilus was one of my first legendaries I ever got. And I was so excited to get him, and then realized he just doesn't quite have the power because his attack range and radius is just really uncomfortable for what you would want. You can see like he does. This is the ability is meant to be really good for, in the sense that every summoned unit, his battle skill is meant to increase damage by 20%.
Okay, and it's kind of
strong.
awkwardly. Yeah.
But then his ultimate is like based on everyone around him. So it's like, can I get him into the position to attack all the minions that I want, the enemies?
Okay, got you.
When I've got an army around me trying to make his battle skill work, it's hard.
So long story short, is positioning is challenging, is the downside.
Exactly.
Who was the one that you were talking about who really unlocks everything for the legendaries?
For the legendaries, it's actually there's not really. It's just a lot of the power, like Lil Warnis, and Premster, they're the really like big damage dealers of the summoners. Sharlach and Larry are pretty good as well, like the Fairbear if you can get it set up right. But like Premster's passive, if you get a lot of skeletons summoned from like the rare pools and the epic pool of summoners, that can really pump some good damage. It's surprising.
Again, I don't know. I mean, now that we get a free summoner, I guess I should say that in season 1, should that inform our legendary? Should more people be leaning into Summoner Season 1 just because of that, would you say?
It depends what you get.
Especially as this accessible rare is good too, you know? It makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you don't pick up many of the rally enablers, you don't pick up, like you can't get some of the good wild damage dealers, and maybe you got unfortunate with the other ones. Well, having access to 2 legendaries that will work. It will work. Like Larry and Sharlach are really good because he will duplicate the Fairbear, and the Fairbear, when you've got 2 of them, can actually do really well. It's the combination of those 2 that actually makes it probably worthwhile. But yeah, I think people will still, players should still use them if they're legendary, because there is the quality of a legendary shouldn't be ignored just because they're a specific summon type.
All right, let's talk about Frost, man. Frost. Is it like every other game where it's control is the key to their added value, or is it different?
It's different.
Okay. Is it
Frost
damage?
Has absolutely got no. So there is Frozen in the game.
Okay, but it's not.
And I always mix it up with
Frost. Got you.
It's totally different.
Okay.
So Frost is a little bit like Rally, but based on what the enemy has. So Frost is all going to be about doing bonus things when the enemy is under Frost, whereas Rally is all about when I'm under Rally. Frost is the other way around, but it's a very similar concept. So you might do bonus damage. It might be that when Frost is enabled, it'll do different features or different effects here. But it's basically, the Frost itself does nothing. It just enhances the ability. So you can see
so it's like
here,
Hex
for example,
a little bit back in the day.
Yeah, that's a very good example. Yeah,
all right.
Raid reference, I like it. Yeah, it's actually pretty good.
Do have it. So before we jump into the heroes too on Frost, is it going to be important to have enough accuracy on every Frost applier that we have? Okay.
Yeah, if you're Frost, the person who's going to be applying the Frost, they need accuracy.
Okay, all right. So that's pretty basic. It does nothing. It synergizes with their other abilities, which is easy to understand at least. Are there any key heroes we should be talking about?
Yeah, so like the big damage dealer here that is probably most accessible for everyone watching is Usha. It's a rare, very, very good champion. Usha is one of the first, like, it's a bit like Sigrid level. Her ultimate,
I remember talking about her. Yeah,
damage dealing. Yes, really good. Like she is hit. For example, very much like Rally, where we were seeing like Filter do 1800, she will deal twice the amount of damage to enemies under Frost. So she can clear waves very well. But she needs someone to set her up. Right? She needs someone to set her up because she's the damage dealer. She's not the Frost applier. She can apply it.
I was going to say, she does have it.
It's
100%.
It's kind of like, you know, when we're building hero champions in Raid and we're like, well, we're going to use someone else to put the decreased defense on so we can focus on damage. That's a bit like the same
Understood.
thing here.
She wants that setup. Is 10 seconds like considered a good duration, would you say? Or are there better, you know?
There are better Frost enablers. 10 seconds basically means 50% uptime, which is not bad. You're never ever going to get 100% uptime unless you bring multiples. So Dorkaraz here is an exceptional damage dealer. Again, you can see his ultimate. He will gain attack up when he's attacking in Frost. That's what I mean. Sometimes the damage is more. Sometimes I get an effect. Okay. They're all different. Okay. The real good enabler that I think everyone should keep an eye out for here is probably Rava. Rava is a really good enable, an epic one, because very much like the Lauren Thiel from Rally, he can apply a vortex on his ultimate ability. Okay. Cold Vortex to enemies within range every 1.5 seconds with a 75% chance of inflicting frost. For 10 seconds, upon expiration, the Nexus will explode, dealing 400% additional cold damage to enemies within range. All right. So you're permanently applying frost for 10 seconds. Yeah. Pretty much. It's really good. So that's a good way of sustaining the frost. And as long as frost is on, all of your abilities will do more damage. All right. Now, does anybody labeled support or defense apply frost, or are the frost appliers always going to be labeled frost? And that's the same thing with every other type. Apply frozen. Okay. But they can't apply frost. Welcome to my world of it's difficult. No. Pretty much things like Rally, things like Poison, things like Frost, they are limited to the heroes who are in those archetypes. Those roles. So we have a couple Frost Legos as well here. So we have some decisions to make. Most importantly, Vinara. That was so awesome that we summoned her, man. I'm still reliving that moment. I don't know. Yeah, she's amazing. I don't know how excited I should have been there because as a noob, you know, but the fact that you were like, you know, before the summoning, I was like, who do we really want? Like, who's one of the best legendaries in the game? And we called our shot, man. You said Vinara, and we got her. And she's the frozen one. She's the one that confuses me more often. She's the one that has frozen. She has frozen, but not frost. Got you. But not frost. Yeah, all right. She confuses me. So, so what if somebody gets lucky like us and gets their hand on Vinara or whomever? Was like we do have a frost legendary too, so we have a frost applier. So dude, it seems like a no-brainer. We should go frost, right? Or no? Well, Hockaday is a bit awkward. Just like Urzilus was a bit difficult, and he's very much the same thing. His targeting is very much the same thing as Urzilus. So you kind of like you struggle, but what he's very good at is he gives attack up to frost. So he's like he's more of a supportive role with a bit of damage, like this kind of like hybrid bruisery kind of role. Okay, but he does have this kind of like Zarvia passive esque feeling where when someone dies under frost, he deals bonus damage, which is really cool. So probably Hockaday Usha is a very good setup, but you'd still want someone like a Rava because of his melee limitations, right? You want someone that's ranged that can just dump frost everywhere. Cool. Any other key heroes to look out for here? So not necessarily from your team building, but when you're facing things, be prepared to be annihilated by a Hivitar every now and then. It's a legendary frost champion. Frost hero here. Hivitar looks very innocent, very sweet, but
right out of Frozen,
when you enter
no
the
deal.
battlefield, you get this passive, and it's the most scary thing. And what it does is it puts like this red bar around your health bars. And if you fall below a certain HP, you absolutely get destroyed by
execution.
It is scary. I'm sure when we get further into the season, we start climbing Fey Meander, we are going to hit a Hivitar wall. She is probably one of the scariest PvE, a bit like War
blockers.
Chief, you know.
Okay.
You face War Chiefs in Doom Tower, and you're like, why did I die? And it's because, well, there's a War Chief. That's what Hivitar is like. It just destroys your fun.
I know that Driss was like the big, like from a marketing perspective, I know that he was their big, like everyone was talking about him, because when I did ads, it was like, mention Drizzt. So is he any good?
Well, you can't get him anymore, unfortunately.
Oh, so he's like, even though we're in season 1, where he's unobtainable now?
He is exclusive, yes. He was part of the collaboration with Dungeons and Dragons. Very good if you have him, but yeah, we can't get him.
He's gone the way of Ninja. Well, who knows? We'll I'll add a pinned comment if we find out otherwise. All right, cool. And last but not least, we're gonna talk some Flame. This is where things get This is where things get wild. This is where things get tough for us on our account here with Kairos, as we mentioned at the top. But talk to me about Wild.
Wild, yeah. So Wild is probably the best class, I think, for Vortex for most players in this season, because the epics can provide you with very good damage. But what Wild essentially does is whenever they're doing spells, they have a chance to roll the dice, as we're playing a D&D kind of type game. And if they roll successfully, it will boost the performance of their ability. So it's kind of a little bit like a hybrid rally thing, where, you know, if I get the effect, then I get a bonus. But instead of it being based on a buff or someone placing it, it's all about how often it rolls. Now, sometimes this is just like self-rolling, where if the hero rolls positively, success. But sometimes it's also based on how many applications. So, for example, this is a good example here. Every time an ally launches a successful wild attack, then Flora deals bonus damage. And Flora is the ultimate queen. She is... Yeah,
she's like the best hero in the game, right? I think you remember, or up there, right?
For Wild specifically, she is probably the best Wild champion by quite a margin.
Okay, all right. Is it just the sheer damage?
Much damage. Yeah, it's so much damage. You can see here, so she'll put a Vortex. She does... the Vortex, the target will take additional derivative damage, but it's more that every single time the Wild check goes off, you can see at the top right there, it's basically saying the damage is going to go up every single time. But this passive is what makes her incredibly strong, especially with her exclusive artifact as well, because she's what they call an exclusive hero, where they have an artifact specifically designed for their abilities. If you get that with her, then she goes into another continent of damage. It's another universe. It's kind of crazy.
Okay, well, that's enticing. That's exciting. Beyond that, rares, epics, anything that we should be looking out for when trying to build a Wild team?
Yeah, so it's very popular because you get Horus as part of the daily login, who's a very, very good tank. So he can fit the flame. So
you have your defender or your defense.
You have your front line, exactly. And then for another free legendary you get is Eric. He is a free legendary you get from completing the storyline. And he has got a passive here where he will increase his own attack every time he increases his wild success chance by 14 stacks every single time a wild check is completed on the team. So it means that his wild proc rate is really, really high by the time he gets really stacked up. Okay. And then I think he attacks 5 times, which makes him a pretty good damage dealer.
5 meter, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. And of course, every single time they do a spell, they're having a roll, and it could increase the damage by 120%. Okay. So you kind of already have a basis, and then the epic you really kind of want to look out for, and this is mainly for Temporal Vortex, like the daily boss, is Tonalnan. I can never say his name.
Tonalnan. Got you. Yep.
Kind of a cool lizard, and what Tonalnan is very good for, you can see, gets an extra 20% crit rate flat. So you don't need 100% crit rate, you just need 80%. Okay. Much easier to build. But what you will do is you'll gain attack up. But more importantly, every single time a wild check is completed on the team itself, his crit damage goes up by 5%, up to 20, which is a lot. Okay. It is a lot. If you think that's basically 100%
crit rate, that
more.
Crit damage, and then once he's powered up fully, it seems like he'll be a DPS beast.
Absolutely. And because it's based on the wild success on your team, this is where that whole concept of you don't want to just bring him on your own, because it's going to take a while if he's on his own.
Yeah.
But if you have someone who's doing a lot of spells with a lot of skill haste, and you have 2 more next to him, then that passive will get to 20 stacks very quickly, which means you're going to do more damage.
All right, and we already talked about the best of the best in Flora. Anybody else who would be a, you know, kind of no-brainer? I'm making a wild team here.
Yeah, Alfie's not bad because Alfie creates a bit like that Laurenthiel orbit where the ultimate creates like an aura around all the team, and then it increases the chance of wild checks, which is nice. It means you get, you know.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yep. Okay.
Which is cool. So he's a pretty good enabler, and you got some decent damage dealers. Like in terms of Foley's not bad, nowhere near as good as Tonalnan.
So like an Alfie, a Foley, and a Horus, you'd be good to go right there with a.
Exactly. Okay. And then the Caraman is special, and the only reason why Caraman is special is he's one of the few epics that can jump the backline. So what he will do is he will attack the target with the lowest current health, and a lot of the time in arena you're struggling to like get beyond the tank. He can jump behind the tank, kill the enemy, recharge, jump to the next one, and do a lot of damage. So
wow,
he's a bit like that with.
And he ignores defense with a big damage. It looks like on his ultimate as well. That's really cool. So when he goes behind and kind of it acts like a rogue a little bit with a blazing kill and the battle skill, he 100%. Can ult as well and basically execute them.
100%. That's it. Cool. Yeah. So you basically can't protect your damage dealers in arena as much against Caraman. It's only really Caraman and Questa from an epic tier that can do that, and that's often a very powerful. And again, when you're fighting them, a scary experience, because when you're in Fey Meander and all of a sudden they're just piling
they're
on
assassinating
your backline,
you.
Like,
Yeah.
No,
okay.
Save my allies.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of how that works.
Well, Saf, I think this was a great breakdown. I've learned a ton. Hopefully the viewers have as well. We're going to cut this one right now, and we're going to come back and get ready for our next videos. We're going to start ranking the best healers and the best kind of tanks in the entire game, kind of playing into this, like, how are we building our first team kind of format here. So let's get that video prepped, man. Thanks again. Any final thoughts on any of these types and kind of how they'll inform how you construct a team?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing to remember is you're never going to stick to one type. You're going to want to experience all
eventually,
of them at some point.
Yeah.
And at some point, you're going to have to build every single version, probably. So getting yourself familiar with these early, even if you don't build them straight away, is probably a good thing to do. And I think once you start experimenting and seeing them, they're quite fun to play with.
All right, great. That's going to do it for the video, guys. Thank you for watching until the end. And as always, take care, guys.